right, so section 2.8 talks about function operations and composition. And so the first part that I have here deals with operations on functions and domains. So it says, given two functions f and g, then for all values of x for which both f of x and g of x are defined, then the functions f plus g, f minus g, f times g, and f divided by g are defined as follows. Okay, so let me explain this part in the easiest, breeziest, cover-go way that I can tell you. If we're trying to find f plus g of x, we're just going to take the function f of x and g of x. We're going to add them together. That's the sum function. If we're trying to find f minus g of x, we're just going to take f of x, we're going to take g of x, we're going to subtract them. It's called the difference function. F times g of x would be f of x times g of x. That's the product function. And f divided by g of x will be f of x divided by g of x, as long as g of x is not 0, because you can't divide by 0. And that's what we call the quotient function. So it says the domains of f plus g, f minus g, and f times g include all real numbers in the intersection of the domains of f and g, while the domain of f divided by g includes those real numbers in the intersection of the domains in f and g, as long as g of x, again, is not 0. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what it is we're trying to find here, okay? All right, so we have two functions. Here's my f of x function, here's my g of x function. And we want to find part A. It says f of g plus 1. So part A says, let's find f plus g of 1. In order to do this, guys, we're going to find f of 1, we're going to find g of 1, and we're going to add them together. So here's f of x. If I'm going to find f of 1 means I'm going to come back over here, and everywhere I got an x, I'm going to put in a 1. 1 squared plus 1. I'm going to come back over here, and everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put a 1. 3 times 1 plus 5. So this is 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 5. 2 plus 3 plus 5, isn't that 2 plus 3 is 5 plus another 5? That's giving me 10. Okay. Now, let's do part B. Part B says we're going to find f minus g of negative 3. Okay. So we're going to find f of negative 3, we're going to find g of negative 3, we're going to subtract those together. So I'm going to come back over here, and everywhere I had an x, I'm going to put a negative 3. So negative 3 squared plus 1 minus, I'm going to come back over here, I'm going to put this in parentheses, guys, 3 times negative 3 plus 5. Okay. So negative 3 squared is 9 plus 1 minus 3 times negative 3 is negative 9 plus 5. Okay. So that's going to give me 9 plus 1 is 10. Minus, let's see, negative 9 minus 5 is a negative 4. So that becomes 10 plus 4, which is 14. Okay. And you know what, I'm going to move over to the right because I am running out of room here. So part C says we're going to find f times g of 5. Okay. So part C says we're going to find f times g of 5. So again, just so that we all understand what does that mean I'm going to do, I'm going to find f of 5, times g of 5. So I'm going to come back to these two functions. Everywhere got an x, I'm going to put a 5. So I'm going to put 5 squared plus 1 in parentheses times, because we're multiplying, 3 times 5 plus 5. Okay. So let's see, 5 squared is 25. Plus 1 more is 26. Okay. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 5 is 20. So I'm going to grab my calculator. Let's see, I think I got it right here. Let me turn it on. Let me clear it out. So I'm going to do, what's 26 times 20? And that is giving me 520. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you what, let me erase some of this right here because we had already done it, and we said the answer here was 14. Okay, let's do part D. All right, part D says we're going to find, let me get this going again. Come on, Pat. There we go. We're going to find oops, let me erase that. Okay. We're going to find f divided by g of 0. Just means we're going to find f of 0 divided by g of 0. Okay, so we come back over here. 0 squared plus 1 over 3 times 0 plus 5. So 0 squared is 0, and 0 plus 1 is 1. 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 5 is 5. And so my answer is 1/5, right? There we go. And so we got our answers for all 4 parts. All right. So let me move back here. And we're going to do the same thing for this problem here. We're going to use the graph first to see if we can figure these parts out. So let's do this first one, part A. We want to find f plus g of 4. So we're going to find f of 4, we're going to find g of 4, and then we're going to add them together. Okay, so remember what f of 4 is. So guys, f is my blue line here, okay? The blue line, and g is kind of my red curve this way, okay? So what I'm looking for when I'm trying to find, say, f of 4, I'm looking for what is the y value when x is 4 on the f function. It looks like the y value happens to be 9, okay? And then what is the y value for the g function when x happens to be 4? And that looks like it happens to be 2. So that's just going to give me 11, okay? Part B. We're going to find f minus g of negative 2, which means I'm going to find f of negative 2, f of negative 2, and I'm going to subtract g of negative 2. Okay, so f of negative 2 means I'm looking for the y value on the f when g is negative 2. It looks like it is negative 3. And then if I try to do that for the red function, if I go to negative 2 and I go up and down, if you notice, I never hit the red function. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say it's not defined, okay? The whole answer is not defined because that one piece is not defined, okay? Alrighty, let's do part C. Part C says we're going to find f times g of 1, which means I'm going to find f of 1 and multiply it by g of 1. Okay. So let me clean up some of this mess. Okay. F of 1 means I'm going to go to when x is 1. What is my y value here at 1? That appears to be 3. Okay. I'm going to go here to 1, and I'm going to go to the right. That appears to be 1. And 3 times 1 is 3. Okay. And then we're going to do D as in dog. So when x is 0, the f value appears to be, let's do it like this. F divided by g of 0, first off, sorry. F of 0 divided by g of 0. Okay, so f of 0 appears to be 1. G of 0 appears to be 0. And this here is undefined, right? It's undefined because I can't divide by 0. Alrighty. So let's see if we can do the next part. We're going to do those same f plus g of 4, f minus g of negative 2, f times g of 1, and f divided by g of 0 using this table here. So let me write at least the first part, part A. Part A says we want to find f plus g of 4. Again, that just means I'm going to find f of 4 and g of 4, and we're going to add them together, okay? So let's do this. Okay, when x is 4, the f value is 9. When x is 4, the g value is 2. 9 plus 2 is 11, right? Part B, we wanted to find f minus g at negative 2. So we're going to find f of negative 2, we're going to find g of negative 2, and we're going to subtract them. Okay, at negative 2, the f value is negative 3. Minus here, it is undefined. So the whole thing here is again undefined. Okay. part C, I forgot what part C was, f times g of 1, f times g of 1, which means I'm going to find f of 1 and g of 1 and multiply them together. So f of 1 is 3 and g of 1 is 1, and multiply them together I get 3. And then d as in dog, we want to find f divided by g of 0. F divided by g of 0. Okay. So that's going to be f of 0 over g of 0. Okay. F of 0 is 1. G of 0 is 0. So again, this here, guys, is undefined. Okay. All righty. So the next thing we have is something called composition of functions. And it says if f and g are functions, then the composite function or composition of f and g is defined by, and so we have it right here. Okay, sometimes people call this the fog because it looks like fog. And it says f of g of x is equal to f of g of x. That's kind of how I read that. Okay, so I would say f of g of x. Okay. All right, so let's see if we can figure out how to do this by going through some of the problems. And the first one says, let's find f of g of 2. So this means I'm going to find f of g of 2. Think about order of operations. Remember order of operations like PEMDAS? Remember we did this back in, I don't know, probably 8th grade or something like that? Remember when we were dealing with the parentheses, we always work with the inside out? So the first thing I want to do is I want to find g of 2. Okay. So g of 2 means I'm going to come back over here, and everywhere I have the letter x, I'm going to plug in the number 2. Okay, so that's going to give me 4 over 1, which is 4. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find f of 4, because I know that g of 2 was the same thing as 4, so all I'm doing is I'm just substituting that in. And now if I want to find f of 4, excuse me, I'm going to come back to this function here, and everywhere I have an x, well, I'm going to plug in now the number 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. So my final answer would be 7. Okay. All right. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now I want you to notice the g and the f are reversed. So if the g and the f are reversed here, then the g and the f are going to be reversed over here. So I'm going to write it like this. G of f of negative 3. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find f of negative 3. So I'm going to move over to the right a little bit where I have some more room. Okay. So I know my function f of x is right here, 2x minus 1. So if I'm going to find f of negative 3, that's going to be 2 times negative 3 minus 1. That's negative 6 minus 1, which is a negative 7. Okay. So now I'm going to find g of negative 7. So I'm going to come back to this function here. That's my g function, right? And everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put the number negative 7. So negative 7 minus 1 is a negative 8. And 4 divided by negative 8 is the same as negative 1/2. And so there's my answer for part B. Okay. All right, let's see if we can do the same thing over here. Let me scroll down un poquito. And notice what we're finding here. It's not a typo. We're finding f of 2. Okay, so I'm going to go f of 2. So I'm going to come to this function here. Okay, f of 2. So that's going to be 2 times 2 minus 3. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 3 is 1. Now that I found that 1, I'm going to plug that in here. So now I'm going to find f of 1. So again, if I'm going to find f of 1, that's 2 times 1 minus 3, which is 2 minus 3, that is negative 1, right? And there is my answer. So do you see, like, these problems, guys, dealing with the composition, they're two-part problems. You got to find the answer for the inside first, and then once you get that answer, you plug it into your function, and then you do that part, okay? So there's always going to be two parts to this thing. Okay, Notice, same kind of problems, but now we're just dealing with tables of values, okay? So remember, I'm going to write this like this. F of g of 2, okay? I got to find g of 2. So here's my g function. G of 2 means what's the y value when x is 2? Well, the y value when x is 2 is 3, okay? Now that I have that, f of 3, I'm going to come to the f function, and I'm going to say when x is 3, what is the y value of f? Oh, it's 1. Okay. All right, let's try the same thing here. So I'm going to write it like the way it's supposed to be written. G of f of 3, the inside function first. So f of 3 we know is 1. So this is g of 1. Then I'm going to come back to my g function up here. G of 1 is 9. Okay. And next one here says let's find f of 4. Okay. So let me scroll up a little bit so I can see this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I know it's going to throw me off, but that's just how it be. Okay, here we go. F of 4. All right, so let me get my eraser. Let me clean up some of this mess here. There we go. And f of 4. So f of 4 is 3. Then I'm going to come back here, and at 3, we get 1. Okay. And it says, why can we not determine f of g of 1 given the information? Okay, well, let's see. If we were going to find f of g of 1, why couldn't we do this? Okay, so let's come back here. G of 1. I know g of 1 is 9. Okay, so now all I have to do is find what? F of 9. And I come back here, let me erase this, but you notice the function is not defined at 9, right? Okay, so what we would say here is f of 9, it's undefined, right? We don't know what the value is at that point. Okay. All right, so I'm going to zoom back in again, guys, because it'll be easier. Okay, so we're almost done. We just got a few more problems to do. So let's do it to it. Okay. Part A, we're going to find f of g of 4. Okay, so g is the red function. When x is 4, what's the y value? The y value happens to be 0. Okay, now f is the blue function. At 0, what is the y value? Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. It looks like negative 4. Okay. All right, let's do part B. So part B says we're going to find g of f of 3. Okay. So f of 3, f is the blue function, right? At 3, the y value appears to be 2. So g of 2. And now the red function, when x is 2, y happens to also be 2. Okay. And then part C says we're going to find f of 2. Okay. So remember, f is the blue function here. Let me clean this up a little bit. So when x is 2, the y value happens to be 0. And f of 0 was, we said, negative 4. Okay. All right. Let's try this next one here. So we're going to find f of g of 2. Okay. So g, again, is my red function. So at 2, it looks like the y value is negative 2. Okay. So negative 2, negative 1, negative 2. The y value here happens to be negative 4, right? And then part B, we have g of 0. Okay. So remember, g is the red function. At 0, the y value happens to be 2. And then if I go to 2, the y value there happens to be negative 2. Okay. And part C says we're going to find g of f of 4. Okay. So remember, f is the blue line. So when x is 4, the y value happens to be 2. And for the red function, when it's 2, the y value there is negative 2. Okay. Already, f of g of 1. Okay. So remember, g of 1 is the red function. So when x is 1, what's the y value? It looks like it is 2. Okay. When x is 2, what is the y value for f? Minus 3. Okay. Part B says we're going to find g of f of negative 2. So at negative 2, the y value happens to be negative 3. Okay. And at negative 3, my y value here happens to be negative 2. Okay. And the last part C, says we're going to find g of negative 2. Okay. So remember, g is my red function. So at negative 2, it looks like my y value is negative 1. And at negative 1, my y value is 0. And that was 2.8.